What would you do if your wife asked new job led her into the arms of another man? This is the true story of how betrayal nearly destroyed my marriage, and how I exposed everyone involved. I still remember that night with unsettling clarity. The kind of memory that sticks with you, not because of the happiness it brought, but because of the storm it quietly announced. Amanda burst through the front door, her face lit up like a beacon, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. She was practically vibrating with excitement, her energy filling every corner of the living room. "Babe, you will not believe the news," she shouted, dropping her purse on the floor. I barely had time to put down my beer before she rushed into my arms, squeezing me tightly. "I got it. The promotion. The strategic partnerships team offered me the position. It's everything I've been working toward." I hugged her back, genuinely happy. For years, Amanda had been grinding at her job, often feeling overlooked by the corporate machine that never seemed to fully appreciate her talent. Watching her finally achieve this was something worth celebrating, or so I thought at the time. "That's incredible, honey," I said, smiling. "You earned this." Amanda pulled away just enough to stare at me, her grin growing even wider. "The salary increase is huge, and the team, oh my God, they're amazing. Totally different vibe than my old department. Young, energetic, full of big thinkers." I listened as she gushed about her new colleagues. The way she described them almost sounded idolizing. "They're so progressive," she said. "It's like, finally I'm with people who get me." I nodded, though something started gnawing at me. Amanda was never one to get caught up in buzzwords or office politics, but the way she spoke about this team felt different, like she was already emotionally invested. As the night progressed, Amanda couldn't stop talking. It wasn't just a new job. It was a whole new world she was stepping into. "You should see how they collaborate," she continued over dinner. "They think outside the box. They challenge each other. Honestly, it's so refreshing compared to the rigid culture I've been stuck in." "Sounds like you're really excited about this team," I commented, trying to keep my tone neutral. She smiled. "I am. I really am." But then she casually dropped the first detail that made me pause. "Oh, by the way," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine, "the team's organizing a weekend retreat to celebrate. We're renting this gorgeous cabin up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Private chef, open bar, bonfire, the whole thing." I raised my eyebrows. "A work retreat? That elaborate?" "Team bonding," she shrugged. "It's how the strategic partnerships team builds trust. Total immersion. No corporate walls, just people getting to know each other." I didn't say anything immediately. I didn't want to come off as paranoid or unsupportive, but the thought of her spending a full weekend in an isolated cabin with a bunch of new coworkers, young, energetic, and apparently progressive, didn't exactly sit well. Still, I let it slide. But then came the kicker. "They actually want to meet here on Friday to finalize all the plans. I offered to host since everyone's schedules are crazy." I blinked. "They're coming here? All of them?" "Yeah, like 8 or 9 people. Nothing big. We'll just order some food, go over the itinerary, and finalize who's bringing what." I forced a smile again, but internally my guard was inching upward. Amanda has always been somewhat protective of our home space, especially when it came to work-related gatherings. For her to open up our home so readily was out of character. Later that evening, as we were getting ready for bed, she brought up something that sent another little alarm ringing in my head. "Hey, babe," she started hesitantly. "Can I ask you for a tiny favor?" "Of course." She bit her lip, clearly trying to choose her words carefully. "You know how sometimes you can come off a little old school." I squinted at her. "Old school? What does that mean?" She laughed nervously. "You know, your sense of humor. Sarcasm. Some of your jokes might not land well with this group. They're very open-minded, very modern. I just don't want any awkwardness. Could you maybe tone it down? Just for the meeting?" I stared at her for a moment. She was serious. Tone it down? Nod and smile? Just sit there quietly? "Exactly," she said, relieved that I seemed to understand. "I promise it's just for one night. And what do I get out of being the perfect host?" I teased, trying to lighten the mood. Without missing a beat, she smiled mischievously. I promise not to hit you over the head with a frying pan. We both laughed, but deep down, I wasn't laughing. Amanda's request didn't come from nowhere. She was worried that I might embarrass her in front of people she clearly wanted to impress. And for the first time, it felt like I was being asked to take a back seat in my own marriage. Still, I agreed. Fine, I'll behave. The rest of the week flew by. Amanda was consumed with preparing for the Friday gathering, texting nonstop, making detailed lists of snacks, drinks, seating arrangements. I helped where I could, moving furniture around, vacuuming every corner, wiping windows until they sparkled. She wanted everything perfect, and I didn't want to be the reason for any drama. By Friday evening, the house was immaculate. Soft lighting, light jazz playing in the background, appetizers laid out neatly on the kitchen island. Amanda looked stunning, dressed casually but tastefully elegant, clearly hoping to impress. Then they arrived. The moment that front door opened, I knew this was going to be a very different kind of work party. The doorbell rang right on time, and Amanda practically skipped to open it. I stood behind her, wearing my most neutral expression, determined to play the role she requested, silent, agreeable, and harmless. As soon as the door opened, they poured in like a tidal wave of energy and arrogance. This wasn't the standard group of professionals I had expected. No polite handshakes, no warm introductions, just a loud, buzzing group of people who acted like they owned the place the moment they stepped inside. "Whoa, nice crib!" one guy shouted as he entered, not even bothering to look at me. Another girl with platinum blonde hair tossed her jacket on one of my leather chairs like it was her personal closet. There was zero acknowledgement that this was my home, zero respect. Amanda, though slightly flustered, maintained her welcoming hostess facade. "Everyone, this is my husband Ethan," she announced. A few muttered hey or nods followed, but most of them didn't even turn their heads. Their lack of basic courtesy set my jaw tight, but I reminded myself of my promise. Keep quiet, nod, smile. Then he walked in. He was the last one to arrive, but instantly commanded the room. Tall, expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, a smug grin glued to his face. Nathan. I recognized his type immediately. The kind of entitled, trust fund brat who never worked a real day in his life, but wielded power because of his father's connections. Amanda had mentioned him once in passing, her boss's top investor's son. Nathan walked straight past me like I didn't exist, and started talking loudly to Amanda as if I weren't odd even standing there. His voice was just the right blend of condescending and flirty, the kind that makes your blood boil if you're a husband standing 5 feet away. "Wow, Mandy," he said, using a nickname I had never heard before. "Didn't expect your husband to live so modestly. My dad's summer home staff lives in places bigger than this." The whole room erupted into smug laughter, and that's when I snapped. I leaned forward, my voice low but slicing through the room like a knife. "If you don't apologize right now, Nathan, you'll be out of this house faster than your father can wire your next allowance. And if you think I'm bluffing, try me." The room fell dead silent. Nathan's grin faltered for the first time. His eyes darted around, looking for backup from his crew, but no one spoke. Finally, he muttered a half-hearted, "Sorry." I leaned back, nodding slightly. "Good." Amanda shot me a look of barely contained frustration, but I didn't care. I had let a lot slide already. I wasn't going to let some punk insult me in my own home. After that brief confrontation, the energy in the room shifted a bit. They toned down their arrogance slightly, though the tension hung heavy in the air. The group began helping themselves to the drinks and appetizers Amanda had laid out. Loud conversations buzzed around me as I sat quietly, sipping my drink, observing. It was then that a woman named Claire, who seemed to be the ringleader of this circus, gathered everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, let's go over the final plans for the cabin retreat," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. The group pulled out their phones and notebooks, and Amanda quickly joined them, eager and engaged. Claire detailed the retreat agenda. The location was a remote luxury cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. a private chef for meals, an open bar available all weekend, bonfires, hiking trails, and lake access, and one special surprise activity scheduled for the final night. "The surprise is gonna blow your minds," Claire teased with a mischievous grin. "Trust me, it'll be a night to remember. Totally optional, but highly encouraged." A ripple of knowing laughter spread through the room. I leaned forward, finally breaking my silence. "Mind telling us what the surprise is?" Claire shook her head, still grinning. "No spoilers, Ethan. It ruins the fun." I glanced at Amanda, who gave me a subtle look, almost a plea. "Please don't press it." Reluctantly, I let it go. For now. As the meeting wrapped up and the group eventually filed out, Amanda closed the door and instantly turned to me, her smile gone. "Really?" she said sharply. "Was that necessary?" I stared at her. "You mean defending myself in my own home?" "Yeah, that was necessary." She sighed and rubbed her temples. "You don't understand the politics here. Nathan isn't just some spoiled rich kid. His father practically funds half the department. One wrong move, and my entire career could be on the line. That's not my problem, Amanda. I will not let anyone disrespect me in my house." Her frustration simmered beneath the surface, but she bit her tongue. "Just promise me you won't make any more waves at the cabin retreat. Please." I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her how badly I felt about this entire situation, but instead, I nodded. "Fine, no waves, but if anything crosses the line, I won't sit there like a fool." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, though tension still lingered between us. As she headed upstairs to bed, I remained downstairs, staring at my reflection in the empty glass, my gut churning. Something was wrong, very wrong, and I knew this was only the beginning. The day of the cabin retreat arrived like a storm cloud I could see forming for weeks but couldn't stop. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking everything, that maybe Amanda's co-workers were just eccentric, that maybe I was being too old-fashioned, too protective, too cynical. But deep down, I knew better. Amanda had been acting different ever since the meeting at our house. Not blatantly, but subtly. More secretive, more glued to her phone. Her answers became shorter whenever I casually asked about work. It wasn't the Amanda I married, at least not completely. The drive to the Blue Ridge Mountains was oddly quiet. Amanda scrolled through her phone, occasionally smiling to herself as I kept my eyes on the road. The tension between us sat like an invisible passenger in the back seat. 2 hours into the drive, as we cruised down a narrow highway, a car flew past us at reckless speed, a sleek black Maserati. I didn't need to guess who it belonged to. Nathan. As he sped ahead, weaving through cars like he owned the damn road, I muttered, "He's gonna kill someone driving like that." Amanda simply shrugged, her voice casual. "That's just how Nathan is. He's intense." "Yeah, that's one word for it," I said under my breath. When we finally arrived at the cabin, I had to admit, it was impressive. Secluded, massive, modern. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows, expansive decks overlooking the forest, a private lake shimmering nearby. It screamed money and excess. As we unpacked our things, Amanda's co-workers began arriving one after another. Some I recognized from the house meeting, others new. Everyone acted overly familiar with one another, like a family that shared secrets they wouldn't dare speak aloud in public. The laughter was loud, the touches a little too casual. You could feel the undercurrent of something unspoken brewing beneath their polished surface. Before long, the drinks were flowing, and the smell of grilled steaks filled the evening air. I kept myself busy at the grill. Cooking was safe. It gave me a reason to avoid awkward conversations with people I didn't trust. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Claire, the so-called ringleader, clinked her glass and gathered everyone around the fire pit. "All right, everyone, time to talk about tomorrow night," she said, grinning ear to ear. The grand finale. A wave of excitement rippled through the group. People exchanged knowing glances, chuckles, and a few even bit their lips like they couldn't wait. I felt Amanda stiffen next to me. Claire continued, her voice dripping with faux innocence. "As you all know, we believe strongly in full team bonding. No boundaries, no walls, no judgment. Just openness. Someone in the back shouted, "Tell him already, Claire," drawing laughter from the crowd. Claire raised an eyebrow, playing coy before finally saying, "Tomorrow night we're hosting a private lifestyle event. Completely consensual, completely safe, but definitely not for the timid." The coded language wasn't even necessary. The message was loud and clear: swingers party. I looked at Amanda, whose face flushed deep red. She quickly leaned over and whispered, "Look, we don't have to participate. We'll just stay in our room. Please don't make a scene." I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, but I clenched my jaw and said nothing. For now. The crowd cheered, laughing, as if this was just some harmless adult entertainment. But to me, it was something far more sinister. It was an erosion of values, of boundaries, of everything sacred about commitment. As the fire crackled and more bottles were opened, Nathan made his way over, wearing that same arrogant smirk. "Don't worry, Ethan," he said with mock reassurance. "No pressure, man. But who knows? Maybe you'll loosen up and join the fun." That was it. I stood up slowly, towering over him. My voice came out calm, controlled, but cold enough to cut glass. "Nathan, if you say one more word to me tonight, it won't be words you'll be tasting. Got it?" His smile twitched but didn't fully disappear. "Relax, man. Just joking." I sat back down, my knuckles whitening as I gripped my drink, breathing deeply to keep my composure. That night in our cabin bedroom, Amanda and I barely spoke. She sat on her side of the bed, scrolling endlessly on her phone while I stared up at the wooden ceiling, feeling the weight of what was unfolding. I finally broke the silence. "Is this who you want to become? Is this the kind of people you want to surround yourself with?" Amanda sighed, still looking at her screen. "It's just networking, Ethan. That's how careers are built nowadays." I turned to face her fully. "At the cost of your integrity? Your marriage?" She didn't respond. Eventually, she turned off the lamp and lay beside me in silence, the divide between us feeling wider than the king-size bed we shared. As I closed my eyes that night, one thought repeated in my mind: something worse is coming, and I need to be ready. The morning after Claire's announcement, everything felt different. The cheerful energy from the previous night had shifted into something darker, unspoken tension hanging in the crisp mountain air. People milled about the cabin sipping coffee, but their conversations were low and cautious now, like everyone was mentally preparing for what would happen later that evening. Amanda barely spoke during breakfast. She sat at the corner of the long wooden dining table, scrolling endlessly on her phone, her expression tight. I watched her fingers typing rapid messages, occasionally pausing, waiting for replies. I hated that I had become this man, suspicious, paranoid, reading into every little action my wife made. But when your gut screams at you for this long, you'd be a fool to keep ignoring it. After breakfast, I decided to step outside for some air. The towering pine trees surrounding the cabin swayed gently, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I needed to clear my head, but instead, my mind kept racing. Nathan. His smug grin from last night wouldn't leave my head. The way he hovered near Amanda whenever I wasn't right next to her. The suggestive glances. The private jokes I was never a part of. I knew something was happening behind my back. I just didn't know what, or how far it had already gone. As I stood there lost in thought, the sliding glass door behind me opened. To my surprise, it wasn't Amanda. It was Marcus, one of Amanda's coworkers who had seemed the most normal of the bunch. "Hey, man," Marcus said softly, glancing around like he didn't want to be seen talking to me. "Mind if I join you for a second?" I nodded. "Sure." We stood silently for a moment, both pretending to admire the view before he spoke again. "Look, I probably shouldn't be saying this," Marcus started, his voice low. "But you seem like a decent guy, and you're not crazy to feel uncomfortable here." My eyes narrowed. "Go on," Marcus sighed. "Nathan and Claire, they like to test boundaries. A lot of people come here thinking it's just a work retreat, until it's not. They blur lines between professional and personal life until people get sucked into things they can't easily walk away from. My stomach twisted. "And my wife?" I asked quietly, bracing myself. Marcus hesitated. "I haven't seen anything happen yet, but Nathan's had his eye on her since day one. He has a thing for married women. It's like a game to him." I clenched my fists. He pushes just far enough to make them question their own limits. And once they cross that line, he owns them, professionally and emotionally. That's how he operates. I swallowed hard, feeling sick. Marcus shook his head. "I just thought you should know." Without waiting for my response, he turned and walked back toward the cabin, leaving me standing there with my worst fears confirmed. The rest of the day was a blur. The group went on a short hike, played some lawn games, ate lunch out on the patio, but none of it registered in my mind. Every time I caught Amanda texting or chatting quietly with Nathan, my insides twisted tighter. And then evening arrived. As darkness swallowed the forest, the energy among the group shifted again, charged, buzzing with anticipation. People dressed differently now. Silk robes, slinky dresses, open shirts. Bottles of champagne were being opened faster than they could be consumed. Music pulsed through hidden speakers around the cabin, setting a seductive rhythm that matched their growing excitement. Amanda came out of our room wearing a dress I had never seen before. Low cut, tight, and designed to attract attention. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Where did you even get that?" I asked, my voice flat. "It was a gift from Claire," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Amanda," I started, but she cut me off. "Please, Ethan, I told you. We don't have to participate. Let's just stay out of the way and go to bed early, okay?" But as I looked around at the scene unfolding, the whispered conversations, the suggestive touches, the smirks between Nathan and Amanda, my blood boiled. Before I could say anything else, Claire clapped her hands loudly and made her grand announcement. "All right, everyone, the main event begins in 15 minutes. Feel free to pair off, explore, or simply observe. No pressure." Nathan's eyes met mine across the room, full of challenge. That was the final straw. I grabbed Amanda gently by the wrist. "Come with me." She looked nervous but followed me back to our room. Once inside, I shut the door firmly and faced her. "You need to tell me the truth. All of it. Right now." Her defenses shot up immediately. "There's nothing to tell." "Don't lie to me, Amanda," I said, my voice deadly calm. "How long has Nathan been pursuing you?" Her face paled. I haven't done anything, Ethan, I swear. But he's been texting me, flirting, being suggestive. I didn't want to upset you, so I didn't say anything." "And you let him?" I demanded. Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't encourage it. I tried to keep it professional, but—" She stopped herself. "But you liked the attention," I finished for her. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I stepped back, my head spinning. "Pack your things. We're leaving tonight." "But Ethan, pack your things." Amanda broke down, sobbing quietly as she grabbed her suitcase. The walls she had carefully built around her betrayal were crumbling fast. As we loaded the car under the moonlight, the party behind us grew louder. Laughter and moans echoed into the night as we drove away in silence. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. We left that cabin behind us, but the weight of everything we experienced didn't stay back there. It clung to us like smoke from a house fire. The drive home was dead silent. The only sounds came from the tires rolling over the asphalt and Amanda's soft, barely audible sobs. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands gripping the wheel. My mind spun in circles, cycling through rage, sadness, betrayal, and cold calculation. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. I didn't trust Amanda's half-confession. I knew there was more beneath the surface, layers of lies that hadn't yet surfaced. Nathan wasn't the kind of man who gave up after a few flirty text messages. Men like him didn't stop unless they got what they wanted, or until someone stopped them. When we arrived home, Amanda immediately went upstairs and locked herself in the bathroom. I could hear the faucet running for a long time. Maybe she was trying to wash off her guilt, Maybe she was just stalling. I sat alone in the living room staring at nothing, letting my rage settle into something far more dangerous. Resolve. This wasn't over. The following days were painfully tense. Amanda returned to her job as though nothing had happened, and I, on the surface, played the role of the supportive husband. But inside, I was on high alert. She'd come home late more often, claiming she was catching up on work or dealing with company projects. I knew better. Her text messages became more private. She guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. The bright, open wife I once knew was now a shadow, operating behind closed doors. I decided to get proactive. First, I began documenting everything. Her work hours, excuses, behavior changes. Not out of paranoia, but preparation. If this marriage imploded any further, I wanted every shred of evidence on my side. Next, I discreetly reached out to a private investigator. His name was Carson. Ex-cop. Sharp. Discreet. Exactly the kind of person I needed. We met at a small diner on the outskirts of town. Carson slid into the booth across from me and got straight to business. "You sure you want to know everything?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." He nodded. "Good. But you need to understand. Once I start digging, I may uncover things you can't unsee. Infidelity investigations rarely end gently." "I'm prepared," I said flatly. Carson opened a notepad. "Give me names, schedules, social circles, phone numbers, anything that can help me track their movements." I handed him everything I had, including Amanda's work schedule, the known names of her colleagues, and most importantly, Nathan's information. Carson scanned the notes. "This Nathan character smells like trouble." "You have no idea," I muttered. The next 2 weeks felt like torture. Carson kept me updated with brief texts. Still monitoring, following leads, gathering footage. Every message left my stomach in knots. Amanda continued her charade at home, smiling when she needed to, being distant when she thought I wouldn't notice. She even started attending more work dinners that kept her out late. But I stayed patient. Finally, one Friday evening, Carson called. "Meet me." I met Carson at his office, a small, nondescript space above a strip mall. When I walked in, he already had a manila folder waiting on the desk. "This is everything," he said, sliding it across to me. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were photographs, lots of them. Amanda and Nathan alone together after work, dinner at high-end restaurants, walking side by side, laughing, leaning in close. One photo showed Nathan's hand on the small of her back as they walked into a hotel lobby. My stomach dropped. "The photos don't lie," Carson said quietly. "They've been meeting regularly for weeks, always after hours. Always discreet, but not careful enough." I flipped through more evidence. Texts Carson had intercepted, showing flirtatious banter that crossed every possible line. Nathan promising her that everything would be okay, and that he could fix her career if she just trusted him completely. My hands clenched the folder tight. I had suspected infidelity, but seeing it captured in black and white ripped the last remaining thread of hope from my chest. I left Carson's office that night with the folder in my passenger seat. As I drove home, I felt strangely calm, because now I had what I needed. There would be no more arguing, no more second chances, no more lies, only truth and consequences. The moment I pulled into the driveway that night, I felt it, an eerie calm, like the stillness before a violent storm. The folder of evidence sat beside me on the passenger seat, practically radiating heat. It was the physical embodiment of every suspicion, every gut feeling, every sleepless night that had haunted me for weeks. I turned off the engine but didn't immediately move. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I stared at the dim glow of our porch light. Inside that house was my wife, the woman I had once trusted more than anyone on earth. And tonight, that fragile illusion was about to be obliterated. Finally, I grabbed the folder, opened the door, and stepped into what I already knew would be war. Amanda was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine when I walked in. She smiled faintly, as if trying to act normal, like she hadn't been sneaking around for weeks. "You're home late," she said softly. I didn't answer. Instead, I set the folder down on the kitchen island and slid it toward her. Amanda glanced down, confused at first, until she saw the photos staring back up at her. Her face instantly drained of color. The air thickened between us like molasses. What is this?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "You know exactly what it is," I replied, my tone ice cold. The truth, finally laid bare. Amanda's breathing grew shallow. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the photos, each one a fresh dagger. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no words came out. I didn't allow her silence to fester for long. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been seeing him?" Tears immediately welled up in her eyes as she stammered. "Ethan, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It just... Answer the question." She collapsed into one of the kitchen stools, head in her hands, sobbing. 2 months, she finally confessed through shaky breaths. "It started with the texts. I didn't think it would go anywhere. But then we crossed the line." I clenched my jaw so tightly I thought my teeth might shatter. "So you've been sleeping with him," I said, more a statement than a question. Amanda nodded slowly, shame burning across her face. I paced the kitchen, my entire world spinning like a hurricane around me. "Was it worth it?" I finally asked, my voice breaking. "The career boost? The thrill? Was it worth throwing everything we built away for this parasite?" Amanda sobbed harder. "I was stupid. I felt trapped. He made promises, said he could protect me at work, that he could open doors." "So you sold your soul for a promotion," I spat. She shook her head desperately. "I didn't plan this, Ethan. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said, staring directly into her tear-soaked eyes. "And now, you've destroyed this marriage." For a few moments, we sat there in suffocating silence, broken only by Amanda's muffled sobs. Then she whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "Can we fix this?" Her words lit a fresh fire inside me. After all of this, after every deception, every betrayal, she had the audacity to ask if we could salvage what she had shattered. "There is no fixing this, Amanda," I said firmly. "You made your choice. You chose him. You chose power, attention, status, over loyalty, over decency, over me." "I'll quit my job," she pleaded. "I'll cut off contact. I'll do whatever it takes." "It's too late," I replied. "You didn't just cheat on me. You humiliated me, disrespected me, and endangered everything we built. You let him invade our lives, our home, our marriage." Her shoulders shook violently as the gravity of her actions finally crashed down on her. "Please," she begged, crawling across the floor to my feet. "Don't leave me." I stepped back. "You lost me the moment you let him touch you." That night, Amanda slept in the guest room. I barely slept at all. Instead, I sat in my office preparing for what came next. The folder of evidence wasn't just for me anymore. It would become my shield, for the divorce, for the legal battles, for the career-destroying consequences Nathan so arrogantly thought he could avoid. Tomorrow the war would begin, and this time I was fully armed. The morning after our confrontation was a blur of cold silence. Amanda stayed holed up in the guest room, and I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee I couldn't taste, staring at the manila folder like it was a loaded weapon. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt purpose. I had spent weeks drowning in suspicion, shame, and betrayal, but not anymore. Now I was clear-headed, focused, ready to act. The first call I made was to a divorce attorney, Samuel Price, one of the most respected family lawyers in the city. He didn't waste time with small talk. "I reviewed the documents you sent over," Samuel said after scanning the photos and text logs I emailed. "You've got an open and shut case for infidelity. This will work heavily in your favor, both financially and legally." His calm, confident tone was exactly what I needed. "We can file immediately," he continued. "Given the evidence, we'll push for an at-fault divorce on grounds of adultery. That will minimize any alimony obligations and maximize your asset retention. Custody 1, TB an issue. No kids involved. So this should be relatively clean. Relatively clean. As clean as gutting a marriage could ever be. While Samuel began drafting the paperwork, I started the second phase of my plan. Containment and exposure. Nathan hadn't just destroyed my marriage. He had crossed lines that could ruin lives, not just mine and Amanda's. His recklessness needed consequences. I still had Carson's surveillance photos, and not just of Amanda, others too. Nathan wasn't exactly discreet with the rest of the company's employees. Some of the photos made my stomach churn. Married colleagues, upper-level executives, all caught in compromising positions at those after-hours retreats. It was a network of impropriety that Nathan had built like a spider's web. I drafted an anonymous email and attached the most damning photos, including Nathan's very public indiscretions with Amanda and others. No commentary, no threats, just cold, hard evidence. Then I sent the email directly to the company's HR department, the CEO, and, most deliciously, Nathan's own father, who sat on the company's board of directors. The fallout didn't take long. By Monday morning, news was exploding behind closed doors at Amanda's firm. Nathan was called in for a private meeting that lasted less than an hour. By lunchtime, his name was scrubbed from the company directory, his email deactivated, his parking spot reassigned. From what I gathered later, the board wasted no time in accepting his resignation, a thinly veiled firing to avoid public scandal. But it didn't stop there. Several other employees implicated in the photos faced disciplinary action. Some were suspended, others quietly resigned to avoid investigation. The HR department scrambled to update the company's code of conduct, and mandatory ethics seminars were rolled out overnight. Amanda, meanwhile, was placed on administrative leave pending further review. She came home that afternoon pale, shaking, clutching a cardboard box filled with the remnants of her desk, framed photos, a dead plant, a few books. They're investigating me, she said, her voice hollow. I barely looked up from my laptop. Good. She flinched like I had struck her. I could lose everything, Ethan, she whispered. You already did, I said without emotion. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly. Samuel was as ruthless as promised. Amanda E.'s attempts to negotiate a more favorable settlement were crushed under the mountain of evidence we had. She tried to argue for half of everything, the house, the cars, the savings, but adultery has a way of burning your credibility to the ground. In the end, the judge awarded me full ownership of our home, our primary assets, and denied her any spousal support. She walked away with a modest settlement barely enough to start over, and a reputation in tatters. When the final gavel struck, Amanda didn't even look at me. She just gathered her things and left the courtroom, a hollow shell of the woman I had once known. But there was one last loose end to tie up. Nathan. For a man who spent his life hiding behind money and connections, public disgrace was a fate worse than death. I knew he would try to lie low, regroup, maybe worm his way back into some other firm his father's influence could salvage for him. I wasn't about to let that happen. I compiled everything Carson had dug up, the parties, the retreats, the improprieties, and forwarded it, anonymously, to a major business news outlet. It wasn't personal anymore. It was principle. By the end of the week, an exposé broke. Corporate heir caught in scandal, allegations of misconduct rock firm. Nathan's face was plastered all over the internet. Photos, quotes from anonymous sources, leaked internal memos. The story caught fire. Within days, he became unemployable, his name synonymous with everything toxic in corporate culture. Poetic justice. As for me, I moved on. The house felt quieter, emptier, but also freer. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I focused on rebuilding my life, starting fresh, but smarter, wiser, stronger. I wasn't the same man who sat silently during that first meeting with Amanda colleagues, and I never would be again. Months passed. The dust from the scandal finally began to settle, but the echoes of what had happened continued to ripple through my life like distant thunder. Even after the court battles, the company firings, and the public exposure, the emotional wreckage lingered. Healing isn't immediate. It's not like flipping a switch and feeling better overnight. It's messy. It's slow. Some days felt lighter, others crushed me like a weight I couldn't escape. But piece by piece I rebuilt. The house, once filled with Amanda's presence, felt foreign for a while. Every room carried memories, some good, some poisonous. The kitchen where we laughed, the bedroom where we once whispered about dreams, the living room where she first told me about her promotion, which became the gateway to our downfall. I kept some of the furniture. I sold others. I repainted the walls, changed the art, rearranged everything. Every small change felt like carving out new territory, a fresh version of me who had survived the wreckage. I also sold the bed. That was non-negotiable. The support system I had around me turned out to be stronger than I expected. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, some offering nothing more than an ear, others offering more practical support. A few beers, long talks, small acts of kindness that helped anchor me when I felt adrift. Surprisingly, even my parents, who I always thought would be quick to judge, stood firmly behind me. My father, especially, had a simple but powerful piece of advice. Son, betrayal reveals people's true faces, but it also reveals your strength. He was right. I discovered that I was stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. Stronger than my worst nights, stronger than my darkest thoughts, stronger than betrayal. Amanda, meanwhile, disappeared from my life almost entirely. The professional world shut its doors on her after the scandal. From what I gathered through mutual acquaintances, she struggled to find meaningful employment afterward. No company wanted to touch someone with that kind of baggage. A woman known for mixing business with pleasure, involved in a massive corporate scandal, exposed in the media. At one point, I heard she tried to reach out to Nathan again, desperate for his support. But his family had cut him off financially to distance themselves from the PR nightmare. He was no savior. In fact, he quickly moved on to younger conquests, abandoning her without a second thought. That part, oddly enough, didn't even satisfy me. By then, I had grown numb to her downfall. I no longer cared about her suffering. I wasn't interested in revenge. What I wanted, what I earned, was peace. For the first time in years, I could finally breathe. No more lies, no more games. No more sitting at home wondering where she was, who she was with, or what betrayal waited for me around the corner. Freedom tasted sweeter than I ever imagined. I focused on my work, something I had neglected during the slow collapse of my marriage. The productivity, the passion, the drive all returned like long-lost friends. I even started traveling again, places Amanda and I had always talked about but never visited. Alone, yes, but free. Eventually, I met someone new. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It happened organically. At a charity fundraiser 6 months later, I met Claire, not to be confused with Amanda's manipulative coworker. This Claire was different, grounded, humble, no drama. She had a gentle kindness that didn't demand attention but earned it naturally. We started slow. Coffee dates, long conversations, shared interests. There was no game, no manipulation, no control. Just two people who had both been burned by life and found comfort in each other's honesty. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to trust. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if Amanda ever fully realized what she lost. Not just me, but the version of me who once trusted her so deeply, who was willing to share his entire world with her. She didn't just betray a husband, she murdered a version of me who no longer exists. But from that grave, someone stronger was born. Someone who understands that love is not about possession, nor power, nor status. Love is about trust, respect, and loyalty, things she had casually discarded. And in losing her, I found something infinitely more valuable: myself. Life has a funny way of offering you closure when you least expect it. Almost a full year had passed since my divorce was finalized. The scandal had long since faded from headlines. Nathan was still a disgraced pariah, and Amanda had vanished into the shadows of her ruined career. My life, by contrast, was calm, stable, and, finally, peaceful. I didn't think about Amanda much anymore. Occasionally, her face would flash in my mind like an old scar. but never with longing, only as a distant reminder of who I used to be and who I had become. But then, the letter arrived. It was an ordinary afternoon. I had just returned home from work, enjoying the predictable rhythm of my new life, when I noticed a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address, handwritten, slightly shaky penmanship. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single letter. No photos, no documents, just her words. It was from Amanda. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I finally gathered the courage to reach out. Something I've wanted to do for months but never found the strength for. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't even expect you to reply. But I needed to say this once, for my own closure. I destroyed us. There's no one else to blame but me. I allowed my ambition and weakness to blind me, to compromise everything we built together. I thought I was smart enough to control the line I was crossing, but I wasn't. Nathan never cared about me. He never planned to save me. I was a pawn he used like he used so many others. When everything fell apart, I realized too late how much I had lost. Not the money, not the career, but you, the man who stood by me for years, who deserved loyalty and love, and who received betrayal instead. You may never understand how much I regret it. Every night I sit alone and replay my mistakes like a broken record, and in those moments, I finally see who I truly was. Selfish, weak, and foolish. I want you to know that I've changed. I've started therapy. I'm trying to rebuild my life in a small way, even if it never resembles what I threw away. I volunteer at a shelter now, trying to help others, trying to redeem myself, though I know true redemption may never come. You deserved better, Ethan, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. I wish you peace, love, and a happiness I no longer deserve. Goodbye. I stared at the letter for a long time after finishing it. Strangely, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity either. I felt nothing. Amanda's words were genuine. I could tell she wasn't playing games, not anymore. This wasn't another manipulation or desperate plea for reconnection. This was simply the shattered remnants of a woman facing the truth far too late. And while her apology didn't change history, it gave me something I didn't realize I still needed. Absolute closure. I didn't reply. I carefully folded the letter and placed it inside my safe, not out of sentiment, but as a final chapter sealed. It was over, truly over. Several months later, as life continued to flow gently forward, I proposed to Claire. She said yes. Standing there, holding her hand, staring into eyes that reflected nothing but honesty and partnership, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pure, unshakable trust. The past was finally buried. The future was mine.